Anyways, so I have been doing a lot of ancestor work, and a lot of it has been through genealogy, which is a really great way to connect with ancestors. Um, I originally started with that back God, almost 10 years ago now, when we did 23andMe. I think my former mother-in-law gave us the kits for Christmas one year. So I mean, I've always been interested in my ancestry because like I have more questions than or had more questions than answers. So I'm going to be doing a series on here, and some of this is for literally is just for my own, talking through these things, documenting it because I want to be able to I want my family and future generations to be able to tell our story, to know our story, to know who we are, how we got here, the things that our ancestors went through. I don't, you know, I wouldn't be that, ooh, we have a sorcerer in the lineage. It me. Although I'm not the first one. But we'll get to that. But one of the things I've been thinking about in this is I'm gonna have to look at, I have a lot of screenshots on my phone. I'm gonna try to figure out how to put some of them in here for, proofage of things because boy, howdy, does it get weird and it gets weird fast. So one of the ones, so the question I had, before get distracted and looking at it, the question that came to me is, and this was in relation to, um, this is on my matrilineal side. Is that one of this is like a half cousin, I'll pull it up then, was Zelda Fitzgerald, wife of F. Scott Fitzgerald. And there was something about it. I may have mentioned it in the last video I did. I'm going to try to do some shorter videos because the last one was really long and rambling and all over the place. But as I was like learning more about her life, and I was like, not only did my parts of my life mirror hers in a lot of ways, but I realized something and it brought up this question for me. And I've talked to a few other people about it, and this is something we're talking about. Like other people think this too. What if what we think to be our past lives, our past life memories? I mean, I've done regressions on myself. I've had regressions done for me. I've had numerous readings done for me. What if what we think are past life memories are actually ancestral memories? We're remembering because that is in our DNA. The connection to our ancestry is encoded in our DNA. It's possible that what we're thinking of as past life memories might be things our ancestors witnessed, experienced, knew about, and it gets wild fast when you put it into that context. Because with Zelda Fitzgerald, I realized I'm listening to a biography on her. It's fairly lengthy. I'm listening to the audio book, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is familiar. Like the details, things she's describing, places she's describing, her life. And I was like, this, and I knew there was something I'd written about this a long time ago, like probably getting on close to about 30 years ago. So this was in like the late 90s. There was no way I knew any of this, but I was writing about, like, I think I was picking up on things from her life, and I wrote, I have it in probably not nearby, but I have it in the document where I'm just kind of like all these things because she was a writer and an artist. She had a lot of mental health problems, as well, married to an alcoholic. So I was writing about, like, I was describing things from her life without realizing it. And that kind of like shook me in the way because and I've mentioned this in multiple videos on here before, is one of my first independent beliefs as a child was in reincarnation, that we had lived before. So this is a pretty fundamental belief for me that I am now challenging through doing my ancestor work. And speaking of which, that's my ancestor. It's not so much an altar as a tower these days. Oh, we have a moon. Hello, baby girl. Oops, sorry, I almost stuck my face in her butt. So it got me thinking about that though. What if our past life memories, visions, readings, what if these are about ancestors? Because there was a reading that I had a few years ago, and again, that reading mirrors her life. And sorry, I'm going to pull up a little bit of information here, so give me a sec. Probably be right back. How long ago was this? Here we go. So Zelda Sayre Fitzgerald, she is my half six cousin, four times removed. I don't know if I have all of it seems to come from one family line or a combination thereof. She was an American author and socialite who gained recognition for her turbulent marriage to F. Scott Fitzgerald and her own literary contributions during the Jazz Age. And she was the inspiration for the Eagles song Witchy Woman, which I find kind of, considering. But it's really gotten me thinking, and she's just really fascinating to me. And that, in so many ways, I'm trying to think how to parse this, in that my own life mirrored hers, and in my ancestral trauma healing, like one thing's because F. Scott Fitzgerald was a raging alcoholic. She was a party girl. That sounds an awful lot like that marriage I had. I was a party girl. Ho 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 howdy. I was a party girl, if you know what I mean. Um, I threw great parties. Oh my God. Legendary parties that people still talk about 20 years later. So, yeah. Um, but there's something that I realize in my ancestor work and in my own trauma healing is that I'm healing ancestral trauma timelines and wounds. Because one of my ex-husband's been sober, or my former husband, he prefers to be called that. Or actually, you know what? My first husband, he's been sober for a decade now, and you know, we're still friends. It's amicable, but we kind of went through hell together there, and it was not easy. But there was something even early on before I really started getting back into the witch stuff again, like shortly after we split up. My maternal grandmother came to me in a dream. Usually, my ancestors come to me in dreams a lot, if they have like a message. And she told me in this dream, because my grandfather was an alcoholic, they hated each other. They stayed together because that's what you did back then. Like to the point at which we didn't tell my grandfather when my grandmother died. And when he went into the nursing home, she was like, thank fucking God. And I believe the nurse who was like when she was in the nursing home when she started having strokes, and the nurse was like, "Oh, your husband's in here too. We can get you guys a shared room together." And boy, did that nurse probably have her ass handed to her. She was like, "The fuck you will." But they died hating each other. And in the dream, she came to me and was like, and she said she was proud of me for being able to do what she couldn't. In, he got sober, I got away, and I started to become the person that I was always meant to be. And that broke that timeline. I also had a great uncle who died of, uh, you know, probably a combination of cardiac. I think it was before I was born. But he was, according to my father, he was a very World War II vet and a very severe alcoholic. Again, you have that. I have a great grandmother who died of like cirrhosis of the liver and coronary things in her 30s. Granted, that was like over 100 years ago, but still, there's that particular wound of addiction and trauma around that. And I feel like through my healing in my timeline, that it's helped heal those ancestral timelines. So, um, now going back to Zelda Fitzgerald for, I mean, going back into like when I was, high school, college age. I always had that blunt flat. I had my default haircut was that flapper girl bob. I was totally into all that 1920s, the flapper girl stuff, the art, the music, the literature, everything about that era just spoke to me. And Zelda Fitzgerald was coined the first flapper girl by her husband, F. Scott Fitzgerald. So there's just these little nuances and things. And once you open up this can of worms, I cannot tell you how rewarding it is. I probably spent a fair amount of money on this over the past year, but like I do a lot of stuff through ancestry.com. So I've been like I did my DNA there, so I was a test there as well. So I was able to, start seeing ancestral lines and how people are related, putting our timeline together. And one of the features ancestry.com has, and it's only on their app, is it tells you like every day you'll get a famous ancestor if you have any. Because Zelda Sarah Fitzgerald, there's a particular ancestral connection. Most of my mother's family is Pennsylvania Dutch. They're German, a little bit of Irish in there for my great grandmother. But they're very German, very Pennsylvania Dutch, Amish, in that whole thing. Um, Most of them, some of the earliest settlers came here maybe in the 1700s, but they were escaping religious persecution in Germany. Pennsylvania, I'm learning more about them because outside of, my grandparents, I didn't really have much of a connection. Um, but my great great grandfather on that side, on my grandfather's grandfa grandfather, I think I got that right. He married into a line of my great great grandmother, who was descended from basically, if you follow that line back up, you land at the right on the smack on the doorsteps of the Mayflower. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there, and it's only by that marriage. So it's in in contemporary witchcraft circles, we talk a lot about decolonizing your practices, and we talk about a lot of that stuff. And it's been an interesting experience looking at that because it's like we both were and weren't colonizers. We were colonizers by marriage, and I can't besmirch my great great grandfather, who I never knew, for loving someone and marrying into that line. Like, and I never was raised within that. If you knew my mother's side of the family, I mean, these are just very reserved, quiet, kind of kept to themselves, not, my grandmother read a lot, but they were very just contained, very basic. Love them, but very blue collar, very that had never occurred to me. It still blows my mind that it comes out of my hokey, corny PA Dutch grandpa. I'm like, what the literal fuck? My mom, the thing about doing the genealogical research is just it tickles my mom so much whenever I send her and our famous ancestor of the day is the one she particularly likes. My mom's maiden name is Singer, is that we are related to the person, Isaac Singer, who invented the Singer sewing machine. And she thought that was hilarious because all the kids in school used to like joke and call her Singer sewing machine as a nickname. And lo and behold, 70 some years later, we discover, yeah, it'd be like that sometimes. So I'm finding the ancestral research and the genealogy and like reconnecting with all of this to be so rewarding on so many levels. And it's deepened my practice, it's deepened my connection to spirituality. And I'm really thinking about that, like, because as I said, I've always had past life memories going back to even when I was a child. Like, that was my first belief. I am challenging something I believe in very deeply and looking at it from a different perspective. Like, what if, because we have these DNA connections to people, the shared DNA we have. Now, one of the questions, I think I did a video on this years ago. It's like, y'all can't all have been Cleopatra in a past life. But, some people are talking hokum. Don't get me wrong. You got enough grifters and shysters and all that. But now here's an example. I'm going to do a separate video on this. Um, I'm also working through one of the services, and this is honestly a great use of AI for this, is my true ancestry. I just uploaded my DNA stuff from Ancestry to there, and there's a lot of different features. It depends how deep you want to go into it, but because again, my father's side of the family, which is all Central and Eastern European, very hard to find any information beyond like great great grandparent level kind of stuff. And even then, I've just got names. Um, yeah, so I think if you watch one of the previous video, I make a joke about how it's like local girl does ancestral research and discovers she's a vampire. Oops. So we have multiple genetic connections to the House of Bathory. Yes, that House of Bathory is in the Blood Countess Elizabeth Bathory. But wait, there's more. We also have earlier DNA ancestry connections to the House of Basarab, of which you later get Vlad Tepes, Vlad Dracula. Dracula. Yes. So I didn't come from Dracula. Dracula came from me. Ha. So yeah, kind of proved my point there. But I'm gonna talk about that in another video because I want to try to break these up because the first video I did in the like a couple months ago was over an hour long, and I just want to break these up into smaller, conceptual things, topics, talking about specific ancestors or ancestral regions and how we do this. But I'm curious to see though, like, what do you think? What do you guys think on the what if your past life readings and regressions and memories, what if that is ancestral? What if that's what you're thinking about? If that's what's coming up, because like like going back to the Cleopatra thing, well, maybe the reason so many people have think they were Cleopatra in the past life is because maybe they have a DNA connection to that little tiny little scant DNA connection, like the connection to the House Basarab, from which Vlad Dracul comes, later. It's very small, a much more of a connection to the House of Bathory, but fucking man, I knew it. I knew it. Vampires. Me and my shiny little vampire cup. Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting. But again, I've been into vampires since I was a little child. I was the fourth grader writing book reports on Dracula and the Wolfman and Frankenstein. I was that kid. I had some mole removals. I don't know. You could see them if you're close up, but I used to have two moles on the side of my neck. And as a child, I was like, these are like, I knew this meant I was a vampire. I knew. I mean, I was like 5 or 6, but I knew I was a vampire. So I know I've skipped a little bit around, but I just kind of using these, and I may do some more in-depth ones, but this one was just fascinating to me because all these little pieces make up who we are. Like I was, these two examples here, I've always been into vampire stuff since I was a little kid. Was really deep into the flapper stuff. That's my default style, that angle black, bob. And finding all this out is, it blows my mind sometimes. It really does. And the royal DNA part has gotten to be really wild on the European side. I'm gonna get into that a little more in other videos, but oh my God. I was like, oh, there we go. There's the Habsburg DNA that no one asked for. And one of my friends pointed out, I was like, oh, that'll explain all your autoimmune issues and all of your things. I'm like, fucking Habsburgs, man. God damn it. Damn Habsburgs. Anyways, so I'm gonna get going on this one, but that was just something I'm thinking about. I'm exploring it more. You may see more videos on this. And again, this is I'm doing an ancestor work playlist. If ancestor work is something that speaks to you, give the other videos a watch. I mean, I've talked about some of this stuff from time to time where I've been exploring Slavic paganism, where I've been exploring, especially I think a lot of it started around the onset of the Ukraine and Russia war. Um, in 2022. So there's some videos that go back to that and start touching on it. But this has always been a passion and interest of mine. In my spirit work this year, working in my path, working with Sorath, this is kind of where it's led me to. I healed through, the vast majority of my remaining trauma. So now I'm on to ancestral trauma healing and integration. So, and that is something I think everyone should do. I think we all should be doing this work. This is part of the great work. This is part of me. This is part of my spirituality. This is part of my genealogy, my family history, my foundational roots, my understanding of everything in the world. And it's shifting and pivoting so fast as I discover more and more. So, anyways, I'm going to end here, but thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Please follow us on social media and sign up for our e-newsletter so you always know what we're going on. Because you know what I'm going to say here? Algorithms suck, y'all. Anyways, love y'all. Bye.